This year will see the role of the FIA president come up for election. That means that anyone who could get some support from the international motorsport bodies could, in theory, be elected as the next president of the FIA. Or at least, that is how the process is meant to work. For the current FIA president, that process is a threat to him. If he can be stood against in an election, then he can be voted out. And that is something that Mohammed Ben Sulayem cannot accept. He has used an obscure loophole to rig the election so no one could run against him, and now there's trouble coming his way. Today I'm going to check out how the FIA president rigged this year's election and the effort to get Ben Sulayem removed from his post, so don't go anywhere. So to understand what's going on here and why it could completely change the FIA forever, you have to start with the candidates who are standing against Mohammed Ben Sulayem in this year's presidential election. Three potential candidates had expressed an interest in standing: American Tim Meyer, Swiss former racing driver Laura Villers, and Belgian journalist Virginie Philpott. Tim Meyer may have been the strongest of the three candidates and was coming out swinging for Ben Sulayem. In his announcement that he was going to be standing for president, he said the FIA is suffering from a corrosive concentration of power and an illusion of integrity, both of which appear to be true. Meyer said his decision to stand was not personal, but, citing what he said were a series of concerns about the current leadership, added that the FIA could do better for the member clubs of the FIA, for the motorsport community, and the mobility community in general. Meyer had a strong position to work from. He had an incredible career in motorsport, having worked for 15 years as a race steward in Formula 1 and in senior leadership positions in championships in the US, including IndyCar and the IMSA and American Le Mans sports car series. From the outside at least, he looked like a real threat. For a few months, it looked like it would be Meyer running against Ben Sulayem in a two-horse race, before Laura Villers threw her hat into the ring as a candidate. At 28 years old and the first ever female candidate, she looked like the weaker option. She's competed across a range of racing series, including Formula 3 and Formula 4-based single-seater categories, and she currently races in the Leisure European Series in a JSP4, which is an entry-level sports prototype car. Virginie Philpott only entered the race at the start of October and, realistically, never had any chance of being elected, even if the election process wasn't rigged against them. See, the process to elect an FIA president isn't as simple as just putting your name on the ballot and keeping your fingers crossed come election day. The process of trying to win the FIA presidential election, which takes place on December 12th, began months ago. There are two key stages that all candidates have to go through before they could have been put on the ballot paper later this year. The first is that they had to pick their future 7 vice presidents of sport and had to submit themselves as World Motorsport Council candidates. The deadline for this passed on the 19th of September. After that, there is the presidential list, which needed to be submitted by October 24th. And now we arrive at how the election was manipulated by Ben Sulayem to make him undefeatable. There is an interesting quirk to the FIA's rules, which Ben Sulayem has abused to make sure that those lists that the candidates sent for approval were invalid. The presidential list which the candidates submit has to include prospective vice presidents for sport, and one must be selected from each of the FIA's 6 global regions. But the World Council list contains only one candidate that the FIA deemed to be eligible from South America, Brazilian Fabiana Eccleston, wife of former F1 boss Bernie. And she is already a member of Ben Sulayem's team. So that prevents any other candidates from naming a potential vice president for sport from South America, which means no one else can enter the election. So with no one standing against him, Mohammed Ben Sulayem will be re-elected as FIA president on the 12th of December. However, this now brings us to the legal action that could stop him and potentially change the future of the FIA forever. But before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more news and analysis on Formula 1, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. So the FIA statutes state that the body will respect the highest standards of governance, transparency and democracy, including anti-corruption functions and procedures. FIA rules require the organization to be neutral in the election process, and that it has an obligation to provide equal treatment between candidates for the FIA's presidency. That definitely doesn't seem to be what is happening here. Laura Villas isn't going to take being excluded from the election by a quirk of the FIA's own rules and has launched legal action against motorsport's governing body to challenge its election process. The legal summons requests a Paris court to order the suspension of the FIA presidential election, which is due to be held on the 12th of December until a ruling is made, over the dispute with a court hearing due on the 10th of November. The FIA is based in France, hence why the challenge is going through the French courts. Villas told BBC Sport, "This procedure aims to ensure that the FIA's upcoming presidential election, currently set for the 12th of December 2025, complies with the organization's own statutes and with fundamental democratic principles. The legal action is grounded on Article 1.3 of the FIA statutes, which commits the FIA to respect the highest standards of governance, transparency and democracy, and on the fact that the FIA is a French law association headquartered in Paris, thus subject to French jurisdiction. This step is neither hostile nor political. It is a reasonable and constructive initiative to safeguard transparency, ethics, and pluralism within global motorsports governance. As I've stated publicly, I am not acting against the FIA, I am acting to protect it. Democracy is not a threat to the FIA, it is its strength." The FIA have, of course, refused to comment on the matter. There will be a mediation meeting before the case goes to court to see if it can be settled out of court, but hopes of that being successful are slim. Villas' barrister Robin Binzard said, "We have obtained authorization for an hour-to-hour emergency summons, which demonstrates that the court is taking seriously the serious democratic failings within the FIA, as well as several violations of its statutes and regulations that we have denounced." According to the BBC, if Villas wins her case, the presidential process would likely be stopped until the conclusion of an investigation into what needs to change at the FIA in terms of governance processes. If that took longer than the time left before the election, Ben Sulayem would stay in power but with a caretaker mandate that would prevent him making any significant decisions or changes. The courts could put in place an external caretaker to ensure that is what happened. What that means is that Ben Sulayem wouldn't be able to fill that role with his supporters, which is what he has done throughout the FIA since coming into power. The case is based on the argument that the FIA only choosing one eligible candidate for a vice president of sport in South America means the election is not following the organization's own rules. Villas' legal action is being backed by Tim Mayer as well. In a statement this week, he said, "As we disclosed in Austin, Texas, we have submitted ethics complaints in relation to the election. To date, we have not even received an acknowledgement from the FIA. This is typical of our experience of the handling of the election by the FIA and mirrors the experience of Laura's campaign." There is also doubt surrounding the eligibility of Daniel Cohen from Costa Rica for the list of World Motorsport Council nominees, given that members must come from countries that host international motorsports events, which Costa Rica does not. Cohen is Ben Sulayem's nominee for Vice President for Sport representing North America. While the French courts may agree that Cohen isn't a choosable candidate for Ben Sulayem, he'll no doubt be able to find another. For fans of Formula One, the intervention of the French courts to potentially disrupt Ben Sulayem's route to being re-elected will be great news. His handling of the FIA and Formula One sporting regulations has infuriated the fan base during his tenure. However, it's unlikely that they will go as far as banning him from standing. It is far more likely that they will force the FIA to approve candidates for the Vice President of Motorsport in South America, allowing Mayers and Villas to at least appear on the ballot. But after that, there is no guarantee that the voting members will turn against Ben Sulayem. Are you happy to see the FIA in hot water? Do you think Villas can win? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.